All right, Charles Moscowitz here. Welcome to the program. Michael D. Shaw is here, of course, on our Thursday edition. And
First day of spring. First day of spring.
first
And
day of
Chuck,
spring.
is it
Hallelujah. In the golden
is
era
it
of Trump.
is it the first spring day though in New England?
I don't know how you describe it, but it's still pretty cold here. Um, the um, the judicial insurrection,
Oh
as it
man.
were, it seems like the last stand for the elites, and I would expect them to do something. You know, they're not going to just sit down and accept this dawning of a new era, which is what we're looking at right now. Really a taking on of these people. The whole election was predicated on our assumption that here I actually have a great quote here. Moses Coit Tyler, late 19th century American historian, he wrote a book called The Literary History of the American Revolution, where he notes that the American patriots during the American Revolution, they harnessed Enlightenment ideas not in reaction to injustice, because they were pretty prosperous, but in anticipation of British tyranny. And I think that describes the Trump era and the Trump victory. We are anticipating and we are witnessing the encroachments on liberty that have been going on for probably, certainly the last couple of decades, if not going back to Wilson. And it's not that we're like, we're not oppressed, but we're concerned enough to try to seize the control of our ability to govern ourselves through our elections and to then take measures to reassert our sovereign rights under God. That's what I think this election
Well,
was
that's
about.
absolutely right. And the what you're calling the judicial insurrection is sort of their last stand. I mean,
Agreed.
uh, it was no doubt. I don't know how many hundreds of federal judges there are. I think 700, and they know where each and every liberal stooge is, and they've
Oh, they
activated.
filed every case. They're filing cases by the minute, and
Yeah.
it's very preordained. I mean, this is you have radical groups like the ACLU and others, and George Soros's groups, basically finding people shopping for the right judges. They tried it here in Boston, by the way, and they failed because Boston's judiciary is pretty good, even if they're liberal. And then they bring these crazy cases that basically are trying to usurp the constitutional power of the executive branch. Now, I saw an interesting article by Professor John Yoo from University of California at Berkeley, of all places, and he noted that as a reaction to Watergate, there was a serious encroachment and redefinition of the executive branch and of the presidency. There was an overreaction. Don't forget, at that time, liberal Democrats took over both houses of Congress. There was, this is when they stabbed South Vietnam in the back by pulling all aid out, and then it helped the North Vietnamese come in and conquer the country. And they were doing other things, and it was headed up by Ted Kennedy and by Leahy over in Vermont and by the new senator from Delaware, Joe Biden.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and a bunch of other people. And what they did was they hamstrung the presidency. He makes this point because he's an expert on presidential history. By turning the various departments of the executive into almost semi-sovereign entities, like, for example, the Department of Justice would operate separate from the president, and that the president couldn't actually go in and get the attorney general to do anything. It would all be sort of quasi-independent, sort of like the way the Federal Reserve works. And that they also created this rule by bureaucracy. They enhanced these departments to the point where they could make rules and laws, actually, they call them other things, without either accountability to the executive or to Congress, that they actually became somewhat sovereign. And that the result is that the presidency was seriously compromised in terms of the actual presidential powers, because the founding fathers envisioned a strong president They wanted to have a strong executive, and that was kind of undone. And now Trump is reasserting those constitutional powers that reside in the executive. He is, they couldn't, after Watergate, the president couldn't fire people. They couldn't. All these people would get some kind of immunity. They would have quasi civil service status. So because the civil service, which was created in the 1880s, it's difficult to fire those people, but they weren't high level. It basically expanded that entity to cover, people at all levels of these agencies, and that the president would have the power to appoint people. But once they were appointed, they had their own deal and they could do their own thing. And, it kind of goes hand in glove with what Michael Lennon talks about with the double government, the national security state. So what Trump is doing is he's reasserting constitutional prerogatives for the president. It's that simple.
Absolutely. And the trouble is that ever since Nixon, this hasn't been the case. And it causes me and probably you to wonder how much of Watergate was orchestrated, in that nobody really cared about breaking into the stupid DNC office.
Nixon didn't even know about it.
Yeah, bringing down Nixon. And, we always say glibly, it was payback for Alger Hiss, but I think it was more than that.
Right.
This was a way of undermining the presidency.
Exactly.
And it's just starting to come back, it seems.
Exactly. It was an agenda to redefine the presidency, and it was a further step in the direction of what Wilson envisioned, which was government by bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Government by what Steve Bannon accurately calls the administrative state. Unelected, appointed, faceless bureaucrats making laws and basically ruling in a similar way that King George III ruled. This is what the American Revolution was about, stopping this encroachment on the sovereign rights of the citizen by this distant power that had no accountability, no legitimacy, frankly. And the other historian I saw an interesting comment, and he's been a guest on my show, is Larry Schweikart, the author of The Patriot History of the United States, a great counterpart to Howard Zinn's Treasonous People's History of the United States. And by the way, late Howard Zinn was a guest on my show years ago.
I didn't know that.
Oh, I wish this was before the internet, so I don't have a tape of it. But what an arrogant, had all the classic leftist affectations, the tics and the moves and the sneers. Anyway, Schweikart has noted that when these rogue federal judges are coming in and saying, you can't fire the people at the USAID, you can't fire the people, from the, that Lee Zeldin can't fire all these hacks, this kind of thing. It's a double-edged sword, because what these decisions are saying, if you look at them, they're not saying you can't fire these people. They're saying you can't get rid of these positions. So what's happening is that President Trump is playing a bit of a long game here, in that he is firing these people, but he's replacing them, since they can't yet abolish the position, he's replacing them with MAGA people, which is something he wanted to do anyway.
Yeah.
And so it's a win-win for Trump. This is what Larry Schweikart notes. He says, on the one hand, if they're able to keep these positions in place, we're going to have all MAGA people, and they're going to do the agenda that President Trump was elected to do. Or eventually, if you have the Supreme Court, and there's no guarantees there, as we know, looking at the Constitution and realizing that it's settled law, Marbury versus Madison, 1803, the president can fire whoever he wants, and he does fire them, then he wins that way. Either way, it's moving in the right direction. I mean, they might have these little skirmish victories. They're putting some Biden hack in a certain spot, and it's aggravating. But in the bigger picture, they're not going to get away with it. And I think that, in my opinion, I think they jumped the shark with this Bozo thing.
Absolutely.
The one when he wants planes to stop midair and return the Agua gang.
Yeah, right.
That to me is I mean, the fact, and now you have to have Democrats defending this. It's like it's actually quite rich. It's quite ironic because you know he's calling for Julie Kelly is doing a great job as a reporter. She's been on this since the J6, and she knows the score. She says that the reason Boasberg now is trying to get like these minute facts, like the logs of when the planes took off and how many people were there and who was there and who knew about it, is because they're trying to set up a trap. They're trying to do like show that there was a defying of the court because they knew that this decision had come out, even though he did it at Saturday night, and that therefore they are in contempt of court. And she was interviewed by Steve Bannon, and let's not forget Steve Bannon. They put him in prison for 4 months for a lot less than that. So that might jaundice his opinion, but he's like, they're going to start putting people in prison over this. That's why they want that information, because once they have that, and they can show that there was an inconsistency. And they're going to use the court, and they're going to use that to imprison people. I don't know about that, but what is happening is that Attorney General Pam Bondi is telling them to go pump sand. She's not releasing that information, and she's doing it under the guise that this is national security, this is foreign policy, this is stuff that's none of the business of the courts. This is the function of the government, and that furthermore, there was a ruling years ago that the Alien Enemies Act is the standing law of the country, and that the courts are not allowed to interfere with that. So there's going to be a hearing on this, I think, on Monday, and that is what's going to be presented. So they're going to have to rule on whether or not the Alien Enemies Act is law, and she predicts that there's no way they can do anything but throw it out. Plus, this Boasberg guy is a radical whose wife was working for George Soros. His daughter was working for a radical, group trying to free violent prisoners and abolish prisons. We're talking real commie stuff. So he's seriously compromised. In a way, it's very much like that judge who was presiding over the Stormy Daniels business, with the daughter pulling in millions of dollars from left-wing Democrats because she's, my father is going to put Trump in jail, send money. And by the way, Bondi's looking into that, and so isn't the FBI.
No, I think this is all going to fail, which is one of the reasons why my head nearly exploded earlier today, because I'm behind on writing these columns. And the thing that occurred to me is that if you combine all this crap, the Tesla terrorism, it's despicable that the left has been unmasked now as nothing more than a group of terrorist thugs. When's the last time the left did anything positive? Seriously.
I know, really. Can you imagine they're torching the best electric car ever made? I thought they liked electric cars, and here you have them. Elon Musk is not. He's vilifying him, and they're trying to bankrupt him. And you've got former vice presidential candidate Walz. Is he making a speech about how wonderful it is that his stock is tanking? His stocks are tanking. Ha ha ha.
So I mean, what was funny and infuriating with this Tim Walz? First of all, the guy comes across like a total goofball. He comes across like your eccentric uncle or something. The one we always make fun of at the family gatherings. Why in the world is this moron celebrating an American company's stock going down, who employs thousands of American workers? What in the world is wrong with this guy?
Not to mention the fact that I think about $500 million of stock is held by the Minnesota Retirement Board.
Yes.
And the Minnesota Pension Fund, where he's governor. So he's going to celebrate that. I mean, the whole thing, and this is what they have. I mean, it's like we're supposed to hate Elon Musk. Why? because he is trying to cut the size of government. He's trying to get rid of waste and fraud, and he's finding these things that are unbelievable. I mean, in terms of like trying to sneak billions of dollars out the door, not just by Biden. It goes way back, but I mean, particularly with Biden, it's unprecedented. And he's exposing it, and he's cutting their funds off. And so I don't expect them to roll over. It's going to be ugly. They're not going to, take this line
Don't they
down.
realize they're on the wrong side? I mean,
I think they do, and I think all they have left is these.
what comes out of it, first of all, you look at Walz. Never mind that this imbecile was a candidate to be vice president. This guy is a governor of a medium-sized state. Who the hell elected this imbecile?
I know it's that's the head of the party now. That and Kamala guzzling her 3 or 4 vodkas before she gets up to speak. But I mean, it's really crashing. So that's why they're looking to these radical judges, and they're making a hero out of certain people being deported and having their visas revoked because they're involved in un-American activities. Something that is not only is that absolutely the prerogative of the Secretary of State, but the Supreme Court recently, like as in like later last year, had an anonymous decision written by Ketanji Brown saying that the Secretary of State has the absolute authority to revoke visas for any reason. So, and yet there they are, they're making this guy into some kind of a martyr. He's like Luigi Mangione, this, oh, look at him. He's like so cute, right? We want to support him. How could you put him in prison? I mean, that's what they're about. That's what they have.
But other than this show, how many people come to the obvious conclusion that the left stands for nothing but destruction? Nothing. There's nothing positive.
People are coming to that conclusion, and I think that if you look at the, generally speaking, I think since throughout the 20th century, the left has never garnered more than at most 30% of support. Now they're down to 18% in the last poll.
Yeah.
So American people are realizing it, and they're really flailing. I mean, they're going to stand on these judicial decisions trying to hamstring Trump. It's not going to work. Trump is moving forward anyways. I hope that people around Trump understand that, and that it's going to get all thrown out at some point. Probably they say toward the end of May, early June, when these cases are going to be decided by the Supreme Court. Now, I don't trust the Supreme Court, certainly not Roberts. I mean, God, that's scary. So you can't totally depend on that. But, I believe in the Constitution. It's going to work out. I hope it doesn't take as long as rescinding Roe versus Wade, but eventually these things do come around.
Yeah. And then what do they have? All right. I mean, where is the adult in the room on that? Where's the James? Well, Carville a little bit, saying, you got to get off these weird positions. But you read formerly responsible newspapers like the Washington Post, whatever. I mean, even the LA Times is backing off a little bit. They'll spin stuff to the left, but they do not advocate for murderers and rapists that are being deported. I just, it makes you wonder.
Well, that's their cause. They want to save the Venezuelan gang, bring them back to the United States. I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's like, this is popular. They want that, and they want open borders, and they want sex change for children. What else are they into? I mean, I don't know what else they have.
But how does that help? What's an ultimate progressive agenda about sex change for children? How does that drive the bigger government and the big communist plan to save the world?
Well, I think there are 2 factors going on with that. Firstly, there's a lot of big money behind that. I think we mentioned that Pritzker's brother, who's now his sister, wearing
Yeah.
the dress. We're talking, multi billions of dollars given to Democratic Party, Democratic causes, and that's his thing. I mean, this is what he wants. And I think Soros is probably a big promoter. It's a big insider thing, and the Democratic people, I mean, the candidates, they're afraid to oppose it, even if they do. You had here in Massachusetts, Seth Moulton. He made some mild statements against men in women's sports because his daughters were on the soccer
Right.
team at the high school, and he was absolutely, he had people like throwing crap at him as he went into his office in Salem. People protesting. It was ugly. And so he backed down. I think he might again be starting to talk about it again. So all the credit to him. But I'm just saying, most of these
Instead of backing down, why doesn't he just change parties? How stupid is the guy?
because he wants to be a big progressive liberal, but he's like, I'm not on board with this. And I think that the people that support it are so nasty. Look at it. I mean, they're firebombing Elon Musk's cars. I mean, this is and
Well,
not some
he's already nabbed 3 of them.
yes, and I think that she's going to really throw the book at them. So maybe that can help. But
Let's talk about this Seth Moulton guy for a minute. All
sure,
right, go back 40 plus years. Casey of Pennsylvania was a good old fashioned Democrat progressive, and that's when the abortion roller coaster came in.
right.
And he took a principled stand at first. What he should have done, as the supposed Catholic that he is just switched parties. Okay?
I think the Republican caved, didn't he?
Yeah. He
Yeah.
caved. All right.
He changed his position. Ray Flynn, former ambassador to the Vatican, former mayor of Boston. I know him. I mean, his show used to come on right after mine when I was on the Christian station in Quincy, and he told me that the Democratic Party, he was pro-life. The Democratic Party purged all pro-life candidates. They were basically. He didn't change his party, though. I mean, you're right. I mean, he should have become a Republican. He wouldn't. He just couldn't do that. But they basically drove him out of public life. I mean, he was.
Well, hang on. Okay, I mean, think about what you just said. He couldn't do that. So where was his? Yeah, I mean, where is his Catholic faith? All right.
I know exactly. Yeah, and there he was, ambassador to the Vatican. He was very close to John Paul II. And a high visible spokesman for American Catholic Church. And and yet he couldn't. He couldn't completely walk away.
Well, it was total idolatry at that point, because he even had to admit to himself that his wonderful Democratic Party was crap.
No, he did admit it to me, and I'm not taking out a turn here because I think he was. I'm not saying anything that he wasn't saying publicly, but he was really like just very angry and very despairing over the whole course of his of what happened to him. He was literally purged. And he said it happened all over the country. The Democrats purged anyone who didn't lockstep on that issue. And that's what they're doing with the transgender surgeries.
Right.
You disagree with that, you are persona non grata. You become like a non-person. It's like very Stalinistic. They take, the famous picture with Stalin standing on the deck of a boat with 4 other guys. Yeah. And then there's another one. There's only 3 there. And then there's another one. There's only 2 left. It's almost like a Twilight Zone. They're like whited out.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happens if you go against this agenda. You're going to get whited out. And I don't know, maybe that's what I don't know if that was what concerned Ray Flynn, but that's why Moulton is not going to jump.
This is a big problem. I mean, the people have this desire that they have to belong to something. Okay, because when all this transgender sports thing started, and I think you and I talked about this at the time,
right?
I said, I really don't get it. Okay, these girls in collegiate swimming, who cares? There's no pro swimming circuit. Quit the team. Who cares?
Well, a lot of them have. I
Yeah.
mean, especially with the contact sports. I mean, a lot of it's tragic. I mean, this. I think the Olympics has banned this. By the way, you had that girl who she's going to be getting into a boxing ring with one of these guys. I think 1 minute in, and she said, "I'm out of here. I quit." You know, she'd worked probably for years to get to that point.
Well, why didn't more of them do
I'm
that?
not going to get my head bashed in here.
So I just don't understand sometimes what motivates people.
Well, the other factor, besides the big money from Pritzker's brother sister, is the fact that ideologically, this is the core idea of the left. It's the core idea of the communist left that you can transform and change human nature. What could be more of a totem of this kind of fetish than literally transforming someone's sex? It's like it's so exciting to them, you know, that you can be a male one day and a female the next, and the whole binary thing, you can decide 10, 20 times, 100 times a day what you are and what you're not, or you could be nothing, you could be neither. I mean, it's just the ultimate manifestation of their philosophical orientation. I mean, this idea that, you know, it's a snubbing your nose at God. It's like, you know, God created men and women in his image, and yet this is saying no. You know, I mean, there was somebody at my synagogue, I've mentioned this, who very learned. I mean, and also happens to be a doctor. I don't want to talk about this too much because I don't want to, you know, if anybody from Boston might know who I'm talking about. But he's giving a sermon. He's been invited, and it so happened that when you do a sermon in the synagogue on the Sabbath, it correlates to the portion of the Torah that is happening that week, right? I think that the church works the same way.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Catholic Church actually created these portions, and Judaism completely embraced it, and rightfully. It was a brilliant redactation of the Torah. So this particular week, you had the story of Adam and Eve. God created men and women in his image, so the book of Genesis says. And he threw in a few comments about that. Well, we now know that that's really not what happened, of course, because there really is no definition of men and women. And, you know, and he went into this. And that's what the left is about. They have to overthrow the Torah. They have to overthrow the basic definitions that emanated from creation. God created all these separations. He created light from darkness, the firmament from the earth, the land from the sea, the animals from, you know, every little species was separated until you finally got to men and women whom he created in his image. That's what made them different than all other beings on the earth. And he gave them language and the ability to reason. So they resent that because they want to be God. They want to decide reality. They want to decide who is men and women and what that means, or that there is no such thing. That's why they can say, well, men can get pregnant. They can say this in congressional testimony. You've probably seen this.
Of course.
You've seen that professor from, I think, UCal San Diego, who was interviewed by Josh Hawley. He's like, it's not so much of, you know, what is a woman, which of course she would not answer, but that men can get pregnant. You know, that's the ultimate expression of the left. You can decide reality. You can make up whatever you say is true. Whatever you say is good is good. And it's man controlling. I mean, Whittaker Chambers talked about this in the introduction to his book, Witness. It's a fight between God and man. God created the universe. God created all of the entities of the world, or the natural world, as a supernatural being. Whereas on the communists, the second oldest religion, they want to replace that with man's ability to create the world. Man decides. A clique of enlightened, how they get enlightened is never described, but somehow they have some kind of cosmic consciousness that gives them the right to decide what is true, what is real. That's why they need to control all the means of communication so they can have that message go out in a pure way, and they cannot be confronted and there can be no dissent.
Well, right. I mean, that's all correct, but are you surprised how many people fell in line with this? The movie industry, so many people in the Democratic Party. I mean, you can make, for example, I suppose, somewhat of an intellectual argument for abortion, I guess, but it really is pretty thin gruel to
Well,
start.
they control the high ground because, I mean, there is something exciting and intoxicating about this idea that you are the king of the universe. These people are out of touch with reality. They're insane. They're privileged, they've got wealth, they feel like I'm now, every day when I wake up, I then descend from the top of Mount Sinai and share my great wisdom with all of man. And that they feel a sense of rightness. Is like, you listen to the way they talk, it's very syrupy, like, oh, it's very kind of exalted. It's almost like they're in some kind of a trance, and that they can decide what they're doing is good. They can decide that they're going to improve the world literally by using these powers that they've somehow been given and that they've seized and that their clique has seized. And then it's reinforced by the fact that you've got, as they used to say, birds of a feather flock together. They think alike. They communicate with their various codes and their bumper stickers. And it's like when you intone those codes, you're welcomed into this. It's not like a secret society, but it's an informal secret society in that you become one of the beautiful people. You become one of the elect. You're serving for the greater good. And that thus you become one of these people that can reorder the universe, recreate man. We're talking about this in my American Revolution history class. All these American Revolution historians who took a somewhat of a communist view, and they started to reinvent American history because they said, well, a real revolution is one like the French Revolution, where they're going to re-identify and reconnoiter the entire society, redistribute all of the material goods, redistribute reality in the eventual aspect. And the idea of changing somebody's sex is probably one of the ultimate expressions of it. It could be, who knows what the future holds. But as of now, I mean, that's pushing the envelope about as far as it's ever been pushed.
Well, but people fall for it somehow.
Well, people fall for it because they control the high ground of communication, and they give out awards. They give out trophies, and they give out punishments if you don't fall for it. People internalize that at an early age. These people are thugs. If you play ball, you're going to get all the goodies. You're going to get invited to the cool parties. You're going to get the good girlfriend. You're going to get trophies. I mean, their shelves are groaning under the weight of all the trophies they give each other. I mean, just a cultural example. If you watch any of these award ceremonies, whether it be the Academy Awards or the other, the Emmys or the Gabbies or whatever the hell they call them, they talk about how amazing, or these late shows, like I don't know, not David Letterman, the newer guy, Kimmel, and them. The main topic of conversation is how wonderful each of them are and how they spoke with this person and how they're all, if these people have some kind of magic. I'm part of this world where I hung out with so-and-so and this one, and that one we on a double date, and it was that one. And you feel like, wow, gee, that's so interesting. I would have liked to have been there. Here I am, this kind of peon. I could never hang out with those people. I couldn't afford to, but I'm not one of these.
Really that pathetic?
Well, it's sort of a subtle message, and that their entire discussion is around how wonderful it is that they know Meryl Streep, or whoever they, whatever it is. And what these people are so amazing. And they go on this world where that's all they talk about is each other and how they know each other and how amazing it is that these people are in the world. I mean, I hung out with De Niro or somebody, wow, oh my God, incredible. And, and how great they are and how talented and how brilliant they are. And when they give the awards, they go on and on. This person, oh, and how much they love this person and how they did this. And they went to this event and I saw them here. And, and it's all because they bow to this agenda, this idolatrous agenda, whatever it may be at any given time. They get all these awards. I mean, I had a conversation actually with a relative of mine who was a far left-wing guy who did pretty well in financially. And I said, look, I mean, if you're such a socialist, as you self-describe, why not redistribute your own wealth? I mean, you're living above your means. Whatever happened from each according to his ability to each according to his means. And his answer was interesting in that he said, well, this is my award for being a good socialist. I get to do this,
Let me think about that for a minute.
Right. I mean, it's like, hey, I was on the right side. I was advocating all the right things to people all my life. So I'm entitled. That's all.
And he really believes that.
Oh, yeah. And this is, I mean, if you take a look at any of these communist dictators, whether it be Castro or Ho Chi Minh or, Kim Il-sung, these people are so rich that they'd make the biggest capitalists blush with embarrassment by the way they live, but they don't actually own anything. It's all stuff that's been expropriated when their communist regime took over, and they're awarded. I mean, Mao Zedong, lavish lifestyle, anything he wanted, he had. Technically, he owned nothing, but it didn't matter because the whole philosophy was, if you're on the right side and you're doing the work of the revolution and you're a leftist, you're entitled to this. This is all what, in fact, we want to give you more of everything because you're doing the right thing. So, I mean, that's the mentality.
And people on that side just don't see this, I guess.
Well, I mean, it also has a cult quality to it. And it has a certain informal secret society quality to it, very much like what Michael Glennon talks about with his double government. They have power. It's a game of power, and it's a game of material control, and it's wrapped in this self-righteous attitude that I think they internalize and they believe in, that they have some kind of a mandate to do good. Hitler believed that they were doing good by removing the Jews from Europe. He didn't think he thought it was very humane because it was like going to make this utopian society, and that the Jew was the enemy of the masses, which you could replace Jew with any other category. I mean, you could replace it with MAGA, actually.
Yeah.
Whatever the enemy is, they always have to have somebody that is an obstacle to our great leap into the sunlit future. And that they believed they were doing good by conducting the Holocaust. I mean, they did. So back to the issue of judicial, insurrection.
You think that is going to come to a screeching halt sometime in the late spring?
Yes.
Where they've exhausted all this crap. And I agree with you. So what do they do next?
Well, and also let me just say, even though it's certainly depressing when they come out with these decisions, and
it's horrible.
You have to put back U.S. aid people, and that
he's not going to do that.
But Stacey Abrams is going to get her billions of dollars that Biden was basically throwing off the deck of the Titanic as he was leaving, with probably an auto pen. Putting that aside, it's depressing, but it's not going to fly in the long run. It's just, it's not going to help them They're not going to, just a couple of decisions and it's going to be over. They're just not going to get that done. I can't believe it that's going to stand in this country. And, it's any more than all of the lawfare stood against Trump when he was out of office. This is just a continuation of the lawfare, except now instead of just going after Trump and trying to have him killed and put in prison, now they're trying to do it to the entire country because they think it's going to hurt the entire movement around Trump. And I would refer people, if they want any evidence of this, to look at Mark Elias's Twitter page. They subscribe to him. I comment back to him. He knows who I am. Because he's one of the architects of this, him and Weissman. But, they're two buddies. I mean, they basically are, working together. But he's a truth teller. He brags about it. We're winning on this case. We're winning on that case. I didn't even know they were bringing this case. You can learn, you can look at his page and know exactly what they're doing and how, they really are convinced that they're going to do it. And he goes, and this is just the beginning. The ball is going in our way. We're going to get one over here in California and we have one going up in Maine. And, he lays it all out. So,
well, speaking of Maine, what is the agenda there?
Oh, you mean with Janet Mills?
Yeah.
Oh, Maine has really been taken over. If you go to Portland, you can see it. That the southern part of that state has been taken over by really, really demented, wacko leftists. And
what about the average Mainer?
Well, the average Mainer, we're talking about a small. Maine is, I think it's something like 85% of the population of Maine is in that small triangle between Portland and Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's just that southernmost part of the state.
Right.
The rest of the state is great. It's conservative. It's but they don't have any power. It's all in the hands of this. They've built it up since the 60s. A lot of hippies went up there, a lot of alternative types. It's where Bethel, Maine has this institute that was set up by, who was it? Kurt Lewin or something, some Kurt Meisner, who basically trains teachers to be change agents.
Yeah.
It's basically a factory for the left. And they employ a lot of people up there, and they all went up there, and they just control that state. It's too bad because it's a great state and it's a beautiful place. But it's really, I don't know if it's completely gone. They put in the ranked voting so they could just keep rigging. You can keep voting and voting and voting and voting until they get who they want. And I don't know what's going to come of that.
Yeah. Really sad. Well, what's going to come of this school thing is it's going to eventually Trump's going to prevail. So what is her point in doing all this crap? To prove her bona fides or what?
Yeah, that's the power base up there.
Yeah.
And she thinks she wants to be a national figure, and she's just also I think a former hippie, they're trying to see if they can put together some kind of a national leadership. It's either that or this guy who was lost his passport, who was agitating against Jewish students at Columbia. That's a big cause for them. They're just trying to latch on to some kind of a leftist cause and see if they can get any traction. I don't think they're going to. I don't think she's going anywhere outside that state. And I think that Maine might even change. Who knows? But
it's so pathetic because there's, some poverty in that state. There's industries that have left. There's positive things that could be done. And for them to harp on this garbage, it is,
look, here in Boston, we just had Mayor Wu deliver her State of the City address, which hasn't even been covered, by the way, by the Globe, because it was so bad, where she's talking about, it's like no one even knew it happened. She's talking about we're going to defend all of our immigrants. what she means is illegal aliens.
Right, right.
And she spent $650,000 out of the taxpayers' coffers, so she could testify in Washington about when they called her down to testify, and she very skillfully didn't answer any questions about Sanctuary City or anything like that. Instead, it was all like, it's because of too many guns, and that's why there's crime, and we have such a great record. And it's bad news. I don't know, I've heard rumblings that she's not popular, even among liberals. You have she has a real opponent in Josh Kraft, who's Bob Kraft's son, by the way,
Hmm.
and who's liberal but not crazy like her. Who knows? There could be an upset.
Never a dull moment with this stuff.
And of course, our governor, Maura Healey, she's back to spending huge sums of money on so-called migrants, putting them up in hotels, signing a contract with this local caterer so they get 3 meals a day.
Right. So, but what does the typical blue collar guy in Worcester think about this?
I don't, I mean, I wonder where they are, because Worcester just became a sanctuary city for transgender.
Okay.
You saw this, right? So I mean, and it's and anybody who talks about it or criticizes it is creating something that's less than a safe space. People are gonna get violent, right? And if this is something that professor brought up to Josh Hawley, you're naming about the transgender, that creates, don't you know how many murders of transgender people is happening? You're responsible for that by even questioning this thing. I mean, which, by the way, not to get into a subject, but I have a feeling that a lot of those deaths are due to suicide because
without a doubt.
It has nothing to do with whether someone's criticized. It has to do with what's going on. And I think it also has to do with certain unsafe sexual practices, put someone in a position where they could have violence done. So it's not, I mean, I don't say already, I'm like, you're blaming the victim. I'm not blaming anybody. I think if an honest sociologist did a little survey on this, which none of them will do, they're going to find out what's going on with that. Anyway, maybe they might say
that's the other problem too.
They might actually save some lives, which they don't care about.
Is that academia has totally capitulated to this.
I think that might change, because I think that the Trump administration is cutting back on funds to these leftist academic institutions. They're actually, apparently, not the PhD programs, but a lot of these like leftist, like the studies groups.
Yeah.
They were gouging the federal government by inflating grant requests, going way back. Because technically the grant requests get a 15% markup when you go to private issuers of grants. And that's what it's supposed to be. But because it was the government, they were asking for exorbitant fees, and they were rolling in dough, and it was costing a fortune. And now, thanks to Musk and thanks to Doge, they've uncovered this and they're cutting it off. So the money spigot is being tightened. And I think that that combined with the fact that sociology at Boston University and at, I think, Florida State, it's no longer offered as a degree. They're no longer accepting students. Not because there's something wrong with sociology. I'm studying sociology. It's a fantastic science, if it's honest. But because it's become so corrupted by the left, it's such a lapdog for leftist causes and to try to scientize those causes, that people aren't applying for it anymore. Students don't want it. They don't want to be part of it. It's like it's just a propaganda machine. And so it's going away. And this happened before Trump. Trump is actually more of a symptom of this. And so I think that they're starting to, these colleges and these leftist controlled entities, I think that's going to start cracking in the next year or two.
Boy, I hope so.
Yeah, because I think that their monopoly is going to get shaky, because the money is being cut off and because students are walking away. But we'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see.
Well, I found out it confirms something that I had heard rumors of for years. Uh, Talking to some friends the other day, they have a granddaughter who went to some private school and found out that the UC system discriminates against you if you go to a private school. You know, she had a very high grade average and SAT, so it didn't matter. Didn't get into any UC school.
Well, it's
So,
that plus DEI, right?
yeah, well, they were both in play.
Yeah.
And if I look back, even when I went to UCLA, you could see stuff like this going on, but obviously it got much worse over the decades. So I always have these conversations with my oldest son. Which one of us hates academia more? Now, where he goes off is on academic medicine because he's a doctor.
Right.
And if you get started on this, he'll just go nuts for hours about how bad it is.
So that even the medical school has been co-opted and
Oh,
infiltrated.
it's completely co-opted.
You know, we thought that the left cares about science, right?
Well, they care about it and perverting it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You know, it's one thing to have critical theory in Harvard Law School, which is it completely controls, but to get into Harvard Medical School,
Yeah.
that's a problem because then we're messing around with life and death. That's no longer just a bunch of nincompoops telling you, you know.
Well, even that doesn't matter. Remember Ethel Rosenberg?
Yeah.
More important to die for the cause. So.
Well, yeah, but the problem, if they want to die for the cause, good riddance. But I don't want them to kill me when I go to the hospital.
Yeah,
Yeah. So anyhow, but all I think is, I mean, I'm very optimistic the way things are going. I think that Trump is crushing it.
I haven't seen you this optimistic for so many weeks in a row in a long time.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I am, and I look at the people around him; they're absolutely crushing it.
Yeah.
Stephen Miller is brilliant. I don't know if you want to see. He is absolutely, and Kash Patel. You can't get better than that. With Dan Bongino as his wingman, they're going to clean house over there. They're already doing it. I understand. It's not an easy job, but it's going to completely transform the FBI and bring it back to what it should be. I mean, there's so many good signs. The only one that makes me a little nervous is Pam Bondi, but whatever. I think she'll be okay. I just wonder if she's a little weak. Maybe that's because I have a bias against good-looking women. I don't know. But we'll see. I mean, it's not. It would have been better to have Matt Gaetz, but that's the way it goes.
Well, I think he came with too much baggage, though.
He did. Unfortunately, he had a little too many, too little rough around the edges. But somebody like that, I mean, I don't know if she quite has that kind of capacity, but she's okay. I mean, I'm not complaining, believe me.
Well, she hasn't backed down from anything yet.
No, so far so good. And Hegseth, I think, is cleaning house over at the Pentagon. They're howling with rage, but he's doing it. And everyone, I mean, they're all. Lee Zeldin, he's absolutely, crushing it in every sense. They're all good. I haven't seen one bad one in the bunch. And I think that Trump learned his lesson from last time about having snitches and traitors around him. Ain't happening. He got rid of them, and he's firing them all.
Well, I really like what Zeldin's doing at the EPA because a couple of different forms. The main problem with the EPA is that by 1985, all the issues with pollution were essentially solved. So then they had to branch out into extreme areas, and it just got worse and worse and worse.
I mean, problems. It's the same. They're doing the same thing with race, right? That's what DEI is all about. I'm not saying there isn't racism, but I mean, really, in this country today, being a black man or a black woman, it's gold. If you want to get ahead. I mean, there's no longer this isn't the Jim Crow era. And yet they want to kind of codify that and make it into a permanent structure and create an industry around it where they can rake in, billions of dollars and fatten their pockets, it ain't going to happen. It's being dismantled.
Yeah.
And everyone is going to benefit. And that's one of the reasons why I think Trump is ahead with black people in this country. They don't need this. It's I mean, you can look at almost every sector now. This is a revolution economically. The idea of having the tariffs, yeah, there's going to be some short-term pain, but it's a reordering of the entire economy. It's basically, charging a fee to do business in this country, and at the same time reducing the fee on working people. Trump has talked about. I mean, that's a great team. Besant and Russ Voigt at Office of Management and Budget. I mean, and what's his name? The one at Commerce. I forget his name, a Jewish name. Anyway, these guys know what they're doing. Anyway, Rutnick or something.
Lutnick.
Howard Lutnick. They've been planning this for years while Trump was in exile. This isn't something they just cooked up yesterday. And they're reordering the entire economy so that we have labor and industry domestically protected. You have oil and gas exploration and rare earth exploration. And you have a reduction in taxes. I think he's doing this. It's going to be, there's talk about the dividend being that anyone earning less than $150,000 a year, they won't have to pay income tax. That's what the income tax was supposed to be about anyways. Even under Wilson, when they passed the 14th Amendment or the 15th Amendment, it was only supposed to be just very, very high earners. It wasn't supposed to be working people. Getting rid of the taxes on Social Security, that's going to put a lot of money in the pockets of fixed income people. That's money that was already taxed when they put it in. It's a double tax. It's unfair. And it was put in place in the 90s by the U.S. Senate, headed up by Senator Joe Biden. He's the one who authored that. I remember I debated this issue with Barney Frank when I ran against him. It was one of my favorite moments.
How did he justify it?
Oh, he was like, Mr. Morse. He goes, I'll tell you here. And I'm like, Mr. Frank, Congressman Frank, I'll say this. It was just a pure debate. Yeah. That's before I changed my name to Moscowitz. So that's another story. But anyways, economically, it's a major change back to a system that basically supports working people. It reduces regulation, supports small businesses, and basically do what the left always claimed they wanted to do, taxing the rich. Oh, they're going to complain bitterly. And socially, we're moving away from the radical left agenda. Politically, I think that we're making ground on all fronts. There's talk about reforming, and this is an issue that I hope is not forgotten, reforming the electoral system so that we have same-day voting, voter ID, paper ballots, everything that Elizabeth Warren claimed that she supported, but then forgot about. Getting rid of the machines. It's moving in that direction. I mean, these are all things that are going to ensure the future of one man, one vote, and the sacredness of the elections. So I feel optimistic.
What do you think is the order of how the institutions are going to fall or change? I have a feeling that the media is going to be the last to succumb.
That's like the last bastion. That's the Waterloo.
Yeah.
They're all kind of like in there, holed up, and they'll have to starve them out.
I mean, you almost feel sorry for people like Caitlin Collins that come in with this pre-written talking points and inevitably gets shot down, bing, bing, bing. And then the next day she'll have another similar set of these things. And your argument will fight. She's getting X million dollars a year to do this. So this is the game she's playing. But I don't know.
They got rid of Lester Holt. He's leaving.
Yeah.
I mean, I hope that they're not going to pick somebody worse, but I don't think so. I think he's leaving because they're hemorrhaging. Even the New York Times now is laying people off. The Washington Post, I mean, is changing their editorial face. Even Ben and Jerry's is changing. Did you see that?
No, no, no.
The Ben and Jerry's, those two old rotten hippies, those two dirty, guys. I mean, they sold out a long time ago to corporate America, but by selling Ben and Jerry's to Unilever. Well, the Unilever now has come in and they're firing the new guy because they're tired of his progressive tweets. They're like, this isn't helpful. So that's big. I mean, that was one of the major linchpins.
I didn't know that, but that doesn't stop Ben and Jerry themselves.
No, but I mean, they already sold out a long time ago. Talk about the two biggest phonies. I remember when they took the $30 million and put it in their fat pockets. They're like, oh, this is such a crisis for us. Poor babies, right?
Yeah.
Such a crisis. Oh, we should all suffer from that kind of crisis. Anyways, just such a bunch of hypocrites and phonies. And
they still live up in Vermont?
I don't know, but I mean, whatever. They're just a bunch of fakers. So I think that even those people are starting to shake away. This is as I started with. I mean, this is a revolution. This is like, I don't know. I mean, in American history, it's like the Jacksonian democracy. Andrew Jackson came in and he's changed everything. That's what's happening now. And it's going to change things for the next generation and beyond. I don't think that the Democratic Party and I don't think the left is going to come back from this. They don't know it yet, but they are on the losing side of history.
And they keep doubling down. I mean, look at Disney with what the absolute wreck of Snow White is. And they
pulled away some of the marketing dollars for that.
They don't really have premieres as such.
Yeah, but they're not wasting. They were going to do this huge multi-million dollar. They're not doing that because they're tired of throwing good money after bad. Ultimately there is a dollar sign. I mean, they don't want to end up like Enron. It's like after a while, I mean, the thing is going to snowball, and they'll wake up one day and it'll be like, sorry, we spent all your pensions. We're going out, So, I mean, they're just not. It's diminishing. I think for them, they're not doing that for that movie because it is so bad.
But they had every chance to do the right thing, and they didn't. I mean, that's what was so astounding to me. That when they were talking about this 2 or 3 years ago, and they were getting 100% negative feedback on every single thing they were doing, and they just plowed ahead, and then the ultimate mistake was they couldn't keep Rachel Zegler quiet. So, of course, he gets into an argument with, the whole thing that was bad about that, first of all, I don't know where the hell they got that broad. She's nothing more than a talented high school drama girl. That's all she is. I've seen a million of them in LA. All right. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
What she should have done is kept her mouth shut, but she never could.
She is who she is. I mean, it all comes out. It's all exposed in the end.
And meanwhile, Gal Gadot, Israeli, and Zegler keeps talking about the Palestinians, so they have to now separate the two stars of the movie. And by the way, neither of those women can act. I mean, that's the other problem.
Yeah, right.
So who the hell thought it was a good idea? And instead of having real dwarves, you have CGI monstrosities. And, I mean, think about this. $350 million in this movie. And who is in charge? Where's the adult supervision?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that they couldn't hire dwarfs because that would be politically incorrect, right? I mean, it's
I don't know. Dwarf actors that will like the job. Why didn't they hire?
It's kind of like, I mean, maybe this is a metaphor for this, but in the late 1960s, it became unfashionable to have like the freak shows and the sideshows.
Yeah.
And the result was that a lot of people who were making a very good living, like the man with the lobster hands,
Yeah.
and
Lots of course.
lobster boy and bearded lady, and the one who could stick nails in his, they all lost their jobs and they ended up settling in this community in Florida.
Belgrade, Florida. Yeah.
You know about this.
Oh yeah.
And they resented it. It was bad because they were, it's like, oh no, we can't have them because it's, not politically correct. And I think that it's maybe that same mentality that's stripping away any kind of realness to these things.
Well, yeah, they're trying to protect them from themselves. At least they were able to be employed,
And
they didn't have to be welfare.
they're still pushing a radical agenda and a radical sexual agenda. I don't know. I mean, my wife and I are watching this show, White Lotus. Have you seen this?
Heard about it.
Yeah. I mean, we're watching it and that's an agenda. They're pushing some really dark sexual stuff on that show. Stuff that has in society has been, and rightfully, looked at as bad, going back to the Bible times. I mean, we're talking like incest.
Yeah.
And they're making it look fun and glamorous. And they're doing this on the show. Talk about agendas. And look, that show is seen by millions of people. Those things have an impact on society. I mean, it's basically mainstreaming pedophilia, mainstreaming incest, and a bunch of other things by just showing it in a trying to make it look like it's interesting and normal. And so they're still doing this. They're still trying to pull this crap. They're still doing it's basically doing porn, frankly. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's going to work for them because I think that the minute somebody touches a child, they're going to end up in the can for life. I hope.
Yeah.
But
meanwhile, we watch it all unfold.
Indeed. So, what's coming up on the Substack?
Well, all the stuff that I haven't finished, but I just can't get over this notion of doubling down, tripling down on stuff that isn't working. I just have to wrap my head around that because it's so counterintuitive.
It's a fact. We've been talking about this for a while. It's fascinating to watch. It's almost like a double reality, or as Michael Glennon talked about, a double government. All right, so Mike, listen. Talk to you next week. As always.
All right, well, you have a good one.
You too. And onward and upward.
Indeed.
Okay. Take care.
And I hope spring comes to Boston quickly.
Thanks.